Hello everyone, this is Jeremy. Thanks for joining me. I'm a motion graphics designer, animator, and 3D hobbyist. This show is an unrehearsed screen recording of my workflow and a peek into my journey to develop a deeper design skill set. Here it's not so much practice makes perfect, but more practice makes progress. This is The Drill. Welcome to The Drill. This week I'm going to be going through dynamic chains. I'll have a tutorial in the show notes down below on what I followed to kind of do this. But what I did this week, like any week on The Drill, what I'll be doing is practicing a technique that I want to use for a longer form short film. I'm very new to Cinema 4D, so this is a great exercise. I was able to sculpt from the beginning to end and kind of figure out how the dynamics of a chain would work. I'll be going to cables from here to kind of figure out how dynamics work on like a spline. So here you can see I am sculpting a chain link, and what I'll be doing is popping that into a cloner object and cloning that object along a spline path. So just going through right now and getting everything set up. The chain is mounted to that ring at the top, and what I'm doing is using a moving mesh and tweaking the values there to test the chain with the dynamic simulation and see where it's going to break. And get it to that point where it's not going to break. Ultimately, I don't like how the chain is all knotted up right now, so what I'm doing is going through the simulation, changing the initial state after it processes through a little bit so that it gets more to a more natural looking chain. I think here what I did is actually cut the chain length down a little bit. I wasn't going to need a ton in the shot anyway, and it was just gumming up the whole system doing that huge simulation. So shortening the chain and just kind of taking a look there at my reference to figure out how to get everything set up properly. So with the simulation right here, you can see the chain links are breaking. So what I'm doing is going through and tweaking those values to get those in a good spot so that they're not going to break. And then ultimately, once I got them in the right spot, that's when I knew I could start to duplicate them. And what I should have been doing is caching out each simulation so I didn't have to think every time. That's what I'll definitely be doing in the future. But in this case, I did not. So I'll eventually get up to, I think, 5 or 6 chains, and each time it had to process all that information. So the render time as a result was a lot longer than it needed to be. But again, I am new to Cinema 4D, and that is what the whole point of The Drill is. It's supposed to be bite-sized little renders that you can almost like a daily render, but it'll be animations, so I can figure out how to apply those into, again, short film. So what I'm doing right now is running those simulations still, just getting that everything touching properly, and I think at this stage I was happy with it, so I'm moving on to starting to play with the materials. Using Grayscale Gorilla's HDRI link right there to just throw in a quick HDRI and figure out what I'm doing. And I'm going into Polygon and starting to build materials. I think I already had this material set up. I was just kind of getting reference from Polygon and starting to plug in those image texture nodes into the appropriate areas of the material. So at this stage, I'm just kind of taking that material and auditioning different lights and getting a feel for what this is going to look like. I think from here, right here, I was still trying to tweak and get that material in. I wanted something shiny with some grit to it, and you can see those metal scratches in there, so it looked a little more natural, or a little maybe just had a little more wear and tear on it. I think ultimately what I ended up doing was darkening the color of the metal, and that allowed me to get something that I liked a lot more. Some of that reference that I just pulled up there was the case. So just working through the materials right now, just playing with different colors just to kind of familiarize myself with what the different options on the materials do. I found with having a self-defined assignment like this, it was something that kind of almost forced me to think of what a client might want or might need for a specific project or a specific shot. So it wasn't just arbitrary colors or arbitrary lighting or anything like that. So started to frame this up and was looking for a cool composition. I wanted to I like this idea of this like canted angle. It almost looked like you could bring up text in it to kind of show off like maybe a movie trailer or something like that. I think ultimately the look I went for reminded me of like a Dark Souls or at the end of Terminator 2 or something like that. So what I'm doing here is just duplicating these chains, placing them out and in different ways so that when the good thing about not having cached this already is that those dynamics are all live, so each time I hit play it was getting a fresh simulation, and I could kind of tweak those all so I could get a short little animation of what I was going for. With the shots right here, what was nice about it is that with the chain links kind of unfolding, it gave it like a natural like wind effect that I was going for. So here I'm just playing with the lighting, throwing in some area lights, and just seeing where the specular pops and highlights are going to hit based on where I'm putting those. And then I started to play with the color. I like this idea of like this orange, like maybe like lava or fire down below. So you can see that right there. And then I think I bring in another area light and start to get a little bit more of a hit from down below, so you could really start to see where different lights are coming from. So in this stage right here, I was just throwing in some volumetrics to try to get some depth to the scene. I think ultimately what I do is just use a Z depth pass and add in some stock footage of some smoke. So just getting the render all set up here. I think I was good with it. I rendered out a material ID pass just so I had it. I actually rendered out the wrong Z depth pass. Now that memory serves, I think it was tone mapped instead of linear, or linear instead of tone mapped, and what that did was just give me a white image. So I was not able to use that to add a little depth to the scene, but well, another lesson learned. So just getting the render set up here, and just previewing those renders so that we could bring this into After Effects and start to composite the project. There's that render. You can see those chain links are unfurling a little bit. I think at this stage I didn't like how it was all kinked up like that. I liked how the chain, I liked the look and the fluidity that the chain got when a link did unfold and kind of sent that ripple and shockwave up the whole chain. But what I didn't like was starting this composition with these knotted up chains. So what I'm going through now is just letting the simulation play out. I'm going back into the dynamics tag. I'm setting the initial state again on all of those chains, and then I'm starting the simulation over again. So slowly but surely I started to unfold all these chains and get it a lot closer to where I wanted it. So about here is where I liked it. So I set that initial state, and then this is the actual render that came out of Cinema 4D as far as the simulation goes. And again, at this stage, I probably should have baked everything to really help speed up the render time and just, not put such a chokehold on the whole system. But you live and learn. So here I am rendering out the scene, and once it was rendered, I brought the image sequence into After Effects and started the compositing. So I had two different light passes. I had those two area lights down below, and what I did was I was able to flicker them back and forth and kind of give this illusion of fire. There is the couple layers of stock over top of everything. There's a smoke layer, there's some particulate, and it's all I adjusted the hue and saturation. I believe I used Video Copilot's plugin to get that orange glow. Threw a vignette on there. Just played around with some gradient maps right here to see if I could get any other interesting looks out of it, but ultimately I think that's where I liked it. Set it to render and pulled that out of After Effects. So there you see just some particles in the scene, some smoke in the scene, just to give it that environment. With the Z depth pass, I would get a little bit more depth, a little more fall off on the smoke and the particulate, but alas, I did not. And here is the final render, and that is this week's episode of The Drill. Thank you so much for watching. You know how YouTube works. Like, share, subscribe, and comment down below. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitch at Jeremy Walker. That's JRMY_WLKR. You can visit my website for updates or shoot me an email at jeremy@jeremywalker.com. Thank you again so much for watching. This was awesome to do the first episode. I'll see everybody next week on The Drill.